Hello, everyone. Thank you for checking out this episode of Really Dicey. This is Manny, and I'm here with.
Rich Oxenham. I'm a Hatchling DM, most social media. I'm the sort of director of Hatchlings Games, an all ages TTRPG publisher. And we're going to be talking about Overalls, the Kickstarter.
Yes, yes, I'm very excited to talk to you about that. I've been intrigued about your last project. Is Overisles pretty much does it follow the same theme as your first book?
Yeah, it's kind of direct. It's a direct sequel, really. But the thing is, we haven't sort of revealed it yet. But if you back Overalls, you get the first game completely for free as a PDF. And that means that backers from February, when we launch Overalls, will have access to the first game from like April. So they'll be able to play it for like maybe 8 or 9 months before they get hold of the full sequel, which is great from our point of view, because it means it gets the game out to everyone. And like you said, it's an all ages kind of project and product. So it's lovely to have it with families and parents and even schools. It's being played in schools at the moment, which is really exciting for us.
Hmm. So the first book, story-wise, dealt with the Fae some way. So does this continue that story as well, or expanding the genre in different ways?
No, it continues the same world, but basically the first game is kind of like a loosely based on Arthurian Celtic mythology, and it's got elements of that. So you play the sort of descendants of Arthur and Guinevere, Pendragon, and you're teenagers, and you come back through this portal to this like Fey alternative British Isles. And the second game, Overalls, it simply takes from the landscape to the sky. So you've got these floating islands, which one of the Fey friends, they're called in our game, they kind of like migrated essentially to the sky. And that's where it all sets place. And we've got opposing energies in the game called belief and disbelief, which is essentially like good and evil, but in another name. And disbelief is affecting the floating islands. And as Pendragons, you've got to stop the spread of it. Otherwise, the islands will start to sink and collide with the sort of the kingdom below.
Oh wow, very interesting. What else does the book contain? Are there any new rules, or how does it expand what you had previously?
So obviously, it will expand the sign language learning quite dramatically. So there'll be a lot more kind of content that way, that material. And all our games release with video tutorials, like alongside the sort of like visual material. So and they're all kind of like produced by our deaf colleagues in the community. So it'll expand that, but also we started a thing called our sign language version is called shaping in our world, which is like it uses the elements, so it uses fire, earth, air, and water, and use sign language to cast them basically. In the sequel Overalls, we got a thing called feathering, which is essentially like it expands to caring for these giant birds you ride between the floating islands. So it's about like animal care, and it's also how you communicate while you're in flight with your colleagues, with your companions.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you imagine yourself like 20-30 meters away from your your fellow Pendragon, then you can use sign language and feathering to communicate in flight.
Oh, okay. If I may ask, is your goal with these books that not only, of course, sharing an adventure and making this world, but also that you're hoping that when people play these books, that by the end they learn how to do sign language conversely. Um, uh, is that your goal? That's what you're hoping for?
Yeah, I mean, my wife and we're the developers, but we've worked for a deaf charity I've been working there 12 years, and she's been about 8 years there now. And that's how the whole thing started. We're really hoping that it just lessens that kind of barrier to learning the language, sign language, ASL and BSL we're doing, and we're hoping to expand with licensing across the world, basically, to all different types of sign language. That would be amazing. That's kind of the dream. But yeah, we want it to be a robust kind of like very playable role-playing game in its own right, but also a really, really, really effective learning tool. And the feedback we've got so far is really, really positive, especially in schools and with teachers. They say the kids that are really enjoying the learning sign language aspect, they're helping each other with it. Some people grasp it easier than others, and they're really bolstering each other while they're in lessons. And we're hoping that once they've learned through this game, which is essentially equivalent to a level 1 sign language course. So you go from alphabet, numbers, greetings, grammar, hand shaping, finger spelling, all these sort of principles. We're hoping that once they've stepped out of that world, that they'll continue that learning themselves, like self-directed study, basically, and they'll approach different sign language charities and maybe take up the course themselves.
Oh, okay. Now I'm curious, how is that ASL work into the rules system exactly? Do you mind sharing? Like, is it just used for communication between NPCs, or how does that work?
So principally, the main principle of it is in a thing called shaping, like I said. So it's basically casting the 4 elements. So each character at the beginning of the game you create a Pendragon, and you'd have all the usual role-playing sort of things, generally like statistics, and then you have like the grasp of 1 element in your group. So say if you pick fire, you finger spell the word for fire at the beginning level, and then you work up to the sign for fire, and then you start to have conversations about your spells and things. But also it's outside of the game. So if you arrive for a session in the evening, say, or after school, then you can do greetings with each other, and things like deaf awareness. So like instead of clapping when you celebrate something, you'd wave, because obviously clapping's ineffective for the deaf community.
Oh, okay. Going back to the story, who are the villains in these stories?
So I was very, very careful. This is one of the main things. I was very careful to disclude 2 things: the principle of evil, so to speak. So that's why we have disbelief. So in other words, like even battle itself isn't necessarily like negative or evil, but things like death and like things like that, or like violence and murder, they would spread disbelief automatically. So I've tried to cut out kind of very, very heavy themes of like violence and death, and just had it as 2 kind of like opposing energies that are a little bit grey in some ways, because I really love those grey storytelling. Like I remember seeing the film Princess Mononoke, and I thought all the characters in that they had their own motivations, but from different sides they can be seen as good and evil. But really, it's more grey than that. It's much more sort of nuanced.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of what I want to put across to young people. Like they're not necessarily evil, but it's just bad deeds, or like greed, selfishness, kind of like.
Oh, okay. It sounds like there's a lot of also problem solving. Am I correct to assume that?
Yeah, so there's two kind of mechanics in it. One's called a belief barrier, which is essentially like in D&D, if you imagine like an extended skill check, and you work as a team to solve that. So you have one principal leader who uses their element to solve a problem, and then the other companions, the other Pendragons, contribute their own elements to boost the rolls of the dice. So in other words, the best way to solve these belief barriers is through like a cooperative kind of approach. And the other side of it is a disbelief battle, which is like essentially like a duel between like a creature or character spreading disbelief in some way, and you have to kind of confront them.
Oh, okay. Is there tools in your books about not only about like how to run the game properly, but also about understanding sign language properly? Is there anything like that to help game masters?
Oh, 100%. Like it's built from the ground up to be like super accessible to. We think. I mean, we think that we've had playtests with 13 plus is kind of like the sweet spot for kids that can run it. They could actually be the Grail guy, which is our GM. So they could run it, and they could do their own questing days, which is essentially our ventures or campaigns. Because it uses a really simple archetype system where you just pick 6 archetypes and form an adventure from those kind of like, I guess, prompts. And from a player point of view, my friend Steph has run the game consistently with a 3-year-old boy, so and he really enjoys it. So so it can go anywhere from 3 as a player to like 13 and obviously adults, and then 13 plus as a Grail guide, so actually running a game. And there's all the tools are in there. It's got safety tools all the way through it. It's got questionnaires. It's got how to role play. It's got a difference between first person acting and third person acting. All things like that. So yeah.
Oh, okay. I saw some of the art that's coming out for the book also, and it looks fantastic. Do you mind sharing the art direction of the books?
Yeah, so it's kind of, my influences are primarily with the Legend of Zelda series, video game series. I'm a big fan of that, and I really like the cell shaded movement it went into, sort of Wind Waker. I don't know if you've ever played any of the games, but it went, and Breath of the Wild's the recent one. So it's kind of got that aesthetic to it, really. And I asked my artist to kind of capture that a little bit. So it's kind of like accessible, but also very vibrant. And I think that sort of art doesn't ages really well as well. I don't think it goes out of a kind of like fashion, I suppose. It's like visually appealing for life, I think.
Yeah, I hope that doesn't change. Yeah.
And the other influences like the Henson films from the 80s, so like Labyrinth and The Dark Crystal and all those films that I loved as a child. Never Ending Story is one of the big influences on it as well. So those kind of ones with the puppets and stuff, and and that kind of like, yeah. So it's between those two aesthetics really, which I've pulled upon. And I absolutely love the art. I couldn't have asked more from the artist. It's just stunning. It's really consistent all the way through. It feels like one complete kind of book.
This is coming out on Kickstarter in February this year. What stretch goals do you have in mind for it?
We've got so what we're doing is I took a bit of a leaf from Anna Urbanek, who did the Herbalist Primer, where she had the stretch goals linked to the rewards. So in other words, if you back the PDF, you get all the digital stretch goals. If you back the hardcover of the book, you get all the physical stretch goals. So that's the initial thing we're doing. I think that's really quite a lovely way to do it. It means that no backer's missing out on anything then. So we're having things like physical book, we're having posters of all the hex maps basically in the game. So there'll be like 20 hex maps of the islands. So we'll have a poster for that visualized. We'll have, but the kind of things like work out. We've also got like a flashcard deck of all the sign language on cards that you can have at the table. I think that'd be lovely. But the ultimate thing we really want, beyond like giving a pay rise to the team, because it's quite a big team at this point, is would be an app for the sign language videos. That would be just the dream stretch goal if we ever reach that. It's quite high, but I've got a lot of faith in this project. I've got a lot of backers on that have got a lot of faith in it as well. So fingers crossed we reach it. But if we can make an app where it would have all the sign language at the table on a mobile or an app or a tablet, that would be incredible for accessibility.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Is there anything about this project I haven't asked you about that you wanted to share?
Not really. I mean, it's just I want people to be aware, and I don't promote it very often, that it does come with full video tutorials, which is just a massive deal. It just increases the accessibility like hugely. If you can see, because just looking at an image of someone signing, like a static image, isn't enough really at all. You don't get any facial reception, anything like the hand shaping, but seeing it performed, or like done by my deaf colleagues is a different level really of accessibility. So yeah, so you get them all, you get links to that for free with all the products.
All right, excellent. So I will put a link to the description below, so anyone that wants to at least be updated about the Kickstarter, they can do so. Thank you very much for talking to us about this. I wish you the best. I think products like this needs to be out there. We should have as many options as we can when it comes to role-playing games for everyone.
Agreed.
So everyone out there, thank you for watching. Stay safe, get your shots. We'll see you soon. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.